Greetings and welcome back. Today I install the stabilizer pieces on my Cr-10 S5 3D printer. So I've had my S5 for about a year now, and one of the things that I noticed when I was printing anything that was up off the build plate very far at all is the resolution, as it starts to get a little higher, starts to get a little less consistent. Watching a print one day, I noticed that the printer shakes as it's changing directions and stuff like that. And I know it's probably a setting in Marlin that I could go through and change somewhere, but I'm still not comfortable enough playing around with that stuff too much on my own. I don't want to mess with any of those settings. But even if I am able to fix those settings, I knew that I was probably going to want to go ahead and stabilize. Such a tall build plate means that the uprights are tall enough that even at the upper height they're going to shake. So I went on Thingiverse and I downloaded a stabilizing system from the maker Creality Y50. It uses some printed parts, hardware that you pick up at a hardware store or something like that, and a section of 2020 V-slot linear rail. So today I'm going to go ahead and install that and see if it makes any difference at all in future prints. So not too terribly long ago in this video here, I modified the enclosure and put inserts in the frame on the back so that I could take the back plate off without having to reach through the printer. Made things a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and take this thing apart. I'm sure everybody keeps a throwing tomahawk on top of your 3D printer in case you need to take it apart, right? Now what I have done is I have taken a dial indicator that I use for other things and set it up on the build plate and just barely touched it up towards the top of the uprights. And what I'm going to do, and this is not but so scientific, I'm not going to break this down crazy with, you know, pounds per square inch of pulling force and stuff like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flex this plate a little bit like this by pulling on this and see how much travel I get. Then when I install the braces, I'm going to do the same thing and see if it makes any difference at all. And like I said, if I was really concerned about it and I was using this for something professional, I would probably go a little further with my measurements and things, but it's really not even a very good dial indicator. It's the cheap Harbor Freight thing, so it's not but so accurate anyways, and I'm not going to get too carried away with this, but I am a little curious to see if this makes any difference, or any noticeable difference. Right, so my original plan was that I was going to mount this from the back side of the printer. No, not going to do that because the supports for the motor screws to raise the axis are in the way, so I can't mount it from the back. I got to mount it from the front, which is unfortunate, but not that big of a deal. It just means that I took the back of this thing off for no reason. Oh well. So I started at the top left side of the printer, and using the supplied Allen wrench that came with the printer, I undid the Allen head bolts that were inside the frame. I then measured and trimmed the little blue insert stuff that is there so that it looks pretty. Unfortunately, with the thickness of the brackets, these Allen head bolts are not reusable, so these are going to be replaced by the M5 0.8 by 40 millimeter. And I actually went through and put washers on these once I was done because I didn't like that they didn't have washers on them. And unfortunately, because of the height of the printer and my enclosure, I had to use one of these stupid little bench screwdriver thingies to tighten those down. Once I had that side done and all squared up and stuff like that, I moved on to the other side. It did the same thing. pulled the Allen head bolts and replaced them with new panhead metric bolts. Tightened everything up a little bit, checked it to make sure that I still had it all square, and then tightened it down once again. The small screw on all 4 of these brackets are the metric M5 by 0.8 by 10s, and those are backed up by T-slot nuts on the backside. Drop them in there, and then when you turn them, the T-slot nuts turn and lock everything in place. You hope. And with those 2 brackets in place and everything roughly assembled, I took a measurement so that I knew how long I needed to cut the linear rail. And then moved over to the other side. To attach the extensions to the brackets, I used the M8 by 1.25 by 50s. They were actually a little big, so I had to drill out the holes a little bit, but I wanted something real snug so that there wasn't a lot of play in the pieces. I put a washer on each side of these, and then I used a nylon insert nut just to keep things from falling apart. Cinched everything down most of the way. Once I had everything aligned, I cinched it down the rest of the way. I marked the linear rail that I had, and then took it out to the bandsaw and cut it into 2 pieces. I guess technically I cut it into 3 pieces because I made 2 cuts. I took the brackets that attached to the linear rails using the T-slot nuts, put a T-slot nut on the inside and screwed them down just a little bit, slid them over the bracket, and then tightened them up the rest of the way. More angry camera autofocus, sorry. Some more of the M8 screws to attach those brackets to the extensions, and then made sure again that everything was square and level and 90 degrees as best I could. And using more M8 screws, I attached the linear rail brackets to the bottom. So the bottom right picture is the before, the top left is the after. If you'll notice, I have to actually pound on that thing pretty hard to get anywhere near the same swing that I had before I installed the stabilizers. So all said and done, I'm pretty happy with them. They did a fairly good job of stiffening the chassis of this thing up. This was, in my opinion, probably time well spent. So everything is back together again, and all of the stabilizer, excuse me a second. Okay, sorry. Everything is back together again, and all the stabilizer pieces are where they're supposed to be and in place. I'll have to actually compare the video footage where I was tapping on the top frame to see if it makes any real difference, but so far it feels like it might be a little sturdier. Ideally, for it to be really, really sturdy and give it good support from both directions, there would need to be supports on the front and the back, but the way this printer is designed, that would require different braces than what I currently have that I downloaded. I may look around a little bit more and see if I can find something very similar that uses the same materials that are just slightly modified at the top, or I may just build something my own. So I'll look it over and I'll give you some comparison shots of the before and after, tapping on the upright and then pulling on it a little bit to see. But it feels like it might be a little better to me. Anyways, maybe. We'll see. Have a good day.